On this channel, we delve into narratives of financial fraud, scams, and illicit activities on the internet. It's an unfortunate aspect of human nature to be susceptible to these schemes, and today, we aim to shed light on the enduring impact they've had on people of all ages. Our focus today is on one of history's most notorious financial scandals, the South Sea Bubble of 1720. This outrageous get-rich-quick scheme managed to entrap many intelligent and rational people, including the brilliant physicist Sir Isaac Newton. By the end of this twisted tale, Newton had lost over $3 million in today's money after getting swept up in the speculative frenzy. We'll explore the origins of this audacious scam that captivated an entire nation. We'll see how the hype and mania built to a fevered peak before the bubble inevitably burst spectacularly. And we'll learn how Sir Isaac Newton, the man who literally wrote the laws of gravity, couldn't escape the powerful forces of greed and fear that warped the judgment of even the brightest minds of the age. Our story starts in 1719 with an Englishman named John Blunt, one of the directors of the South Sea Company. The South Sea Company was founded in 1711 to help restructure England's massive national debt from costly wars through exclusive trading rights in the Spanish colonies. But the company had failed to actually develop any profitable trade. Blunt was a loyal Englishman, and across the English Channel, the success of the French Mississippi Company greatly disturbed him. Its founder, John Law, had struck gold by starting a trading venture that boomed on speculation over the riches from French territories in Louisiana and the Americas. Law sold shares in the company, and as its price kept rising, Frenchmen of all classes were cashing out and becoming fabulously wealthy. The word millionaire itself was coined in these months to refer to such nouveaux riches. Blunt devised an incredibly risky scheme to try replicating Law's success in England. Blunt proposed that the South Sea Company take on all of England's £31 million national debt. In exchange, the company would get the rights to repackage that entire debt as shares of new company stock to be sold to the public. Despite the dubiousness of his plan, Blunt managed to win over a skeptical King George I by promising it would make England prosperous and solve the crown's debt burden in one fell swoop. King George was massively unpopular, one of the most unpopular English kings of all time. It was not totally his fault. He was not English by birth but German. His title previously had been the Duke of Brunswick and Elector of Hanover. When Queen Anne of England died in 1714, George was her closest living Protestant relative. But the moment he ascended the throne, his new subjects found him not to their liking. So, with the backing of the fiscally irresponsible king, Blunt took his proposal to Parliament in 1720, and it was recklessly approved. From the very start, Blunt used every trick in the book to artificially pump up hype and demand for the South Sea shares. He gifted shares to members of Parliament to win their backing. He sold subscriptions to shares through extremely generous credit terms, requiring only small down payments of 10–20% with the rest to be paid over the years. As hype grew, rising demand pushed share prices rapidly higher from an initial £100 up towards £300, £400, and eventually over £1,000 per share. Blunt further stoked speculation by releasing statements hyping the potential future trading prospects and riches from the company's territories. Whipped into a buying frenzy, people from all social classes pulled their life savings to invest at increasingly insane prices. Noblemen, gentry, and even laborers all clamored to get a piece of the action and get rich quick. The center of activity was an area of London known as Exchange Alley, where almost all stocks were sold. Now the narrow streets in and around the alley were clogged with traffic growing thicker by the day. At first, it was mostly the wealthy and influential who came in their fancy coaches to buy up shares. In a matter of weeks, farmers pulled up from under their beds their life savings in coins and sent their sons and nephews to buy as many shares as possible. The fever spread to women of all classes, who normally did not dabble in such things. Now actresses were rubbing elbows with duchesses in Exchange Alley. Math genius Newton couldn't resist either. Newton had made a relatively small £7,000 investment early when shares were around £300. But as euphoria caused prices to keep soaring to utterly unjustified levels, Newton began having doubts. In April 1720, as prices neared £1,000, the prudent Newton remarked, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." He cashed out, pocketing around £14,000 in profit by getting out relatively early. But as the hype intensified to a fever pitch in summer 1720, seeing others bagging fortunes overnight gnawed at Newton. Irrational fears of being left behind overwhelmed his earlier prudence and skepticism. By August, he had fully bought back into the deranged mania, this time investing over £20,000 in a single massive gamble at the very peak of insanity. In the summer of 1720, South Sea bubble mania became all-engulfing in England. Journalists observed the contagion with disbelief. As satirist Jonathan Swift wrote, "I have inquired of some that have come from London, what is the religion there? They tell me it is South Sea stock. What is the policy of England? The same answer. What is the trade? South Sea still. And what is the business? Nothing but South Sea." Everywhere you looked, South Sea hype saturated society. King George celebrated his 60th birthday by throwing an extravagant, gluttonous party funded by winnings from the bubble. Outrageous rumors spread like wildfire of former servants getting richer than aristocrats. Ordinary people abandoned jobs and homes to persistently haunt the trading exchanges hoping to score shares. One young actress made such a fortune, she decided to retire. She rented out an entire theater to say goodbye to her adoring fans. An aristocratic lady was astonished one evening at the opera to see that her former maid now occupied a more expensive box in the theater than her own. Greed, delusion, and get-rich-quick fever possessed the collective psyche. Entire life savings got liquidated down to the last penny in hopes of multiplying that money overnight on bubble shares. One banking observer described the South Sea trading scenes as nothing so much as if all the lunatics had escaped out of the madhouse at once. The bubble drew in many of England's intellectual luminaries. Besides Newton, celebrated writers like Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift also bought shares in hopes of easy riches. As biographer Richard Westphal described, "It is humbling to record that even Newton had not entirely escaped the feverish excitement which had been kindled by the prospect of easy money to be derived from speculation in joint stock companies generally, and the South Sea funds in particular. The most prudent were affected by the epidemic." Like most humans, Isaac Newton couldn't resist the intoxicating power of greed and envy when stoked by economic mania. He was attracted by the tales of others accumulating instant fortunes, blinding logic and reason. Having missed the biggest gains, enduring wealth gnawed at Newton's legacy drive and status anxieties. The elderly Newton became consumed by magical thinking and delusion that such effortless riches could continue forever independent of any economic fundamentals or revenues. As biographer James Gleick described, by insanity growing for a year and a half, Newton had been swept away. He had come to view the rise in prices as no more than a feeder for itself, if the shares kept going up that continually increased their value as an investment. In the end, Sir Isaac Newton reduced himself to the quote that has become, unfairly, his epitaph in the financial world. "I can calculate the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the madness of the crowd." Of course, the South Sea frenzy and insane valuation multiples could never be sustained based on economic reality. The warning signs first emerged when England passed the Bubble Act in June 1720, trying to restrict other companies from issuing shares. By crushing competing investment frenzies, it redirected even more capital towards South Sea stock, pushing prices into the stratosphere. But with no fundamentals to justify values, skepticism mounted. In August, the first wave of selling sparked a panicked avalanche as everyone rushed to unload their shares before the bottom fell out. By September, sheer panic gripped the markets as the bubble burst in spectacular fashion. Overnight, billions of pounds in fictional wealth got vaporized by reality reasserting itself. The South Sea Company itself quickly fell into bankruptcy after the implosion. It had never actually conducted any real business to justify valuations, only peddling hype and worthless shares. The people behind the scheme were arrested and disgraced by the authorities. Blunt himself was hounded in the streets and nearly killed by an assassin. He had to quickly escape London. He spent the rest of his life in the town of Bath, scraping by on the very modest means still left to him after Parliament seized almost all of the money he had earned through the South Sea scheme. But it was too late to recover losses for the masses of betrayed investors. The toll on Sir Isaac Newton from the burst South Sea bubble was devastating. Despite being one of the greatest scientific minds in history, Newton got caught up in the frenzy just like countless others. At the peak of the mania in 1720, he invested a staggering fortune equal to over $3 million in today's money sterling into South Sea Company shares. When the bubble burst, leaving the South Sea Company bankrupt, Newton's massive investment evaporated into nothing. It wiped out a lifetime of savings and earnings for the aging Newton, forcing him to continue working into his 80s instead of retiring comfortably on his pioneering scientific work and discoveries. The cautionary tale shows that no matter how brilliant you are, anyone can fall victim to financial manias when mass delusion takes over. So make sure to like this video and subscribe for more documentaries. Drop a comment below on your key takeaways from the South Sea bubble scandal ensnaring even Sir Isaac Newton, one of history's greatest minds. Thanks for watching.